The following is a presentation of the Waynesburg University Sports Network.
Hello and welcome back into the Waynesburg University Sports Network pregame show. We'll be bringing you coverage of a women's basketball matchup between the Waynesburg University Yellow Jackets and the Washington and Jefferson Presidents. I'm Riley Holsinger, joined alongside Jack Hillgrove and Nicholas Callas. First, we'll be discussing the Lady Jays game in which they lost against Chatham 70-44 on Thursday night. The Lady Jackets had 12 days off between the St. Vincent and Chatham game due to a positive COVID-19 case popping up on the team. Now I bring in my panelist on the Waynesburg University Sports Network pregame show. Jack, how much do you think that it affected the Lady Jays having 12 days off?
Well, there's a lot that the team could do, obviously, virtually, but that doesn't do justice as getting into the gym and practicing. Look, the Waynesburg University, the Lady Jays are 0-5 this season, and that's what's weird about that too, is that the Jackets are 0-5, and they are tied for the top other two teams for the second most games played in the PAC. The only other team that's played more games is Westminster. They've played 6 games. So while the Lady Jackets had a 12-day layoff, they're still not falling behind in games played, which is weird, but COVID-19 in an era where you're playing during a global pandemic, it is what it is. But back to the Jackets, they are 0-5. I think that a 12-day layoff, it's not going to help any team when it comes to getting a COVID test, giving them multiple COVID positive tests on a team, getting back out there and only playing, Riley, against Chatham with 7 players. Doesn't help you very much at all.
No, not at all. Definitely having a short bench, and teams can take advantage of that majorly. So, Nick, I'm going to bring you into it. How much do you think that affected the Lady Jays, in your opinion?
Well, you got a team right now that's young and is under-rostered. Again, they had 7 active players on Thursday, so you're playing with a short roster already, and then you have that 12 days off where you're not getting repetitions. Again, there's only so much you can do when you're talking virtually and when you're game planning, but it also takes that muscle memory to get into the gym to practice physically what plays or what routines you want to enact when the games are going on. So I think it's a combination of inexperience, a lack of playing, that big layoff, and then just a short roster that's really hurt them so far.
Yeah, I 100% agree with both of you guys. They would have had a really winnable game, in my opinion, if that positive test didn't pop up, because they were going to be playing against Franciscan, who Franciscan, like Waynesburg, hasn't been a very good team in the President's Athletic Conference this season. So let's touch up on the game from Thursday night. The Lady Jays lose to Chatham 70-44. What were some of the main reasons on why Waynesburg completely got blown out in that game?
I'll give you 2 numbers, Riley. The first number is field goal percentage, 22.7%. I'll give you a second number. I don't even need to give you the percentage. 2 of 15 from 3. They didn't shoot the basketball well. That's why they only scored 44 points. Chatham on the season is right around 70 points a game. They're only 2-4. So Waynesburg really did what it needed to do defensively. Chatham wasn't anything special. They shot 40.5% from the field, 23% from 3. Waynesburg just didn't shoot the basketball well. Bad shots, open shots being missed, and 2 for 15 from 3. Ouch. But there's some other numbers that I thought that the Lady Jackets did well in. They only were out-rebounded by 9. Chatham's one of the better rebounding teams in the conference. They only were out-rebounded by 11. I'm sorry, bad math, 53-42. They turned the ball over less from Chatham, 15 turnovers to Chatham's 18. And they stole the basketball away from Chatham more than Waynesburg got it stolen away from them. They had 11 steals. Chatham only had 9 steals. So to me, that tells me that Waynesburg got opportunities in the turnover game. It just was defense, not into offense. And that's how you get on runs. That's how you force a team like Chatham to call a timeout. And you keep the game as close as it was. Again, those 2 glaring numbers, they just didn't shoot it well.
Nick, what do you think made Waynesburg end up losing that game against Chatham?
I think that Waynesburg isn't playing well as a team right now. You have some good scorers on the team. Andrew Orlowski had a double-double in that game, 14 points, 14 rebounds, as did Brooke Fuller, who had 12 points and 10 rebounds, and Avery Robinson had 10 points in that game. But it's just as a team right now, and with the larger numbers, they're not performing as well as a team. And, of course, you're going to expect that when only 7 active players are present for a game. So again, it's just kind of like that inexperience. They're not meshing well together, and there isn't a large roster depth to kind of rotate around and get a feel. As for Chatham, more experienced, more on the roster. Therefore, they won the game pretty handedly.
Thank you guys for your analysis on the Lady Jays recap. Jack, I like how you looked at the positives, though, from the game against Chatham. The Lady Jackets will be playing against Washington and Jefferson today at 1. Stay tuned to the Waynesburg University Sports Network pregame show, as when we come back, we'll be previewing the men's game against W&J. The Waynesburg University men's team is traveling 30 minutes up north I-79 to face its rivals in the Washington and Jefferson Presidents. Waynesburg lost to Chatham 66-64 in a heartbreaker on Wednesday. Waynesburg held an 18-point lead at halftime. Nicholas, why did Waynesburg end up blowing an 18-point lead? And do you think that's unacceptable?
Yeah, I mean, of course it's unacceptable. I mean, I think that's obvious. They got outscored 41-21 in the second half, and whatever breakdowns happened, I can't go into too much as to why. Their just defense must have broken down or something, but you had great performances from Alonzo. Isaiah Alonzo had 23 points. Jansen Knotts with his second double-double so far. He's a freshman, 12 points and 11 rebounds. A, you can't waste those performances, and B, Chatham over the recent years has been a team in the middle of the PAC, right? They're not a spectacular team. They're a good team, an average team, but not, great. So when Waynesburg is losing to teams that they could beat that are in the middle of the PAC, that's only going to doom them for playoffs, especially since all teams make playoffs. So now Waynesburg, instead of winning games that it should have and finishing with maybe 4 or 5 wins going into playoffs, now they're moving down in the seeding. They might be 7 or 8, where instead of playing a team like Chatham or Franciscan, now they're going to be looking at teams like Geneva and Washington and Jefferson come playoff time.
Jack, what were some of those factors?
Well, no, I wouldn't call Chatham average. I think they're a very good basketball program. They're just having a down year. I mean, this was a team that won the PAC tournament 2 short years ago. But there's one glaring number of why the Waynesburg men's basketball team blew an 18-point lead on Saturday. 5 made field goals in the second half. They were 5 of 30 from the field in the second half, shot at 16%. To put it to you this way, so Isaiah Alonzo, 23 points, good number, but if you dive a little bit more into it, he had 20 at half. Isaiah Alonzo's career high is 26. The kid was on pace for 40 points. He needed 6 more points in the second half to tie his career high. He didn't get there. So I don't know if it's as much as Isaiah Alonzo not performing up to snuff offensively in the second half. I thought Chatham did a very good job inside defending him as well, clamping him on double teams. They were quick to him on double teams as well. And then when he would kick it back out to the perimeter, again, Waynesburg only 5 made field goals in the second half. They couldn't knock down big shots, and ultimately, I mean, they didn't really turn it over. They didn't look like they were outplayed. Well, they were obviously outplayed. They didn't look like they were outgassed or anything like that energetically wise. Waynesburg only made 5 field goals. Chatham shot a lot better in the second half. That's why they blew the 18-point lead.
Chatham, in my opinion, I mentioned it time and time again on the pregame show here. I think personally they're one of the best teams when it comes to shooting in the President's Athletic Conference. First half, they came off real sluggish. Second half, they turned it on, and that's what happens when a Chatham team gets hot shooting. That kind of stuff can happen out there, and that was a matchup that I was looking forward to. Waynesburg came into that game one of the best teams defensively in the President's Athletic Conference. Chatham, one of the best shooting teams in the President's Athletic Conference. Whoever won that matchup was going to win the game, but Waynesburg lost that matchup in the second half, and it definitely hurts when you guys like Isaiah Alonzo just score 3 points in the second half. He had good numbers in the first half, but he finished the game 9 for 24, 4 for 6 for 3-pointers, and 23 points. A guy who really surprised me, though, is Matt Popek. He's looking like he's coming back to form for the Yellow Jackets here. The Yellow Jackets will be playing against Washington and Jefferson today at 1. They come into that game with a 2-4 record, while the Presidents hold a 5-1 record. Nicholas, what is a key matchup that you're looking forward to there?
As long as Matt Popek keeps it up, again, he had 17 points in the game against Chatham. If he keeps up what he's been doing recently, I think that'll be good to watch him go and play. And Isaiah Alonzo's got to keep it up as well. I mean, he's great defensively, aside from the second half against Chatham. But, he's been great defensively. He gotten a handful of blocks, and he had 23 points against Chatham. And, I mean, he's around 20 points per game now over the season so far. So I really think those two are key. As long as they get hot and have breakout performances, Jansen Knotts as well, if he keeps it in there, and they just meld well as a team. Like it seems like they've been reaching that, but as long as they play well as a team, then I think they could do well.
So earlier in the season, you'll recall that I called for a W&J upset over Westminster. You guys thought I was crazy, and I was right there. Here, I think I'm on the flip side with W&J. I think Waynesburg, and I had the opportunity to watch the men practice in preparation for the women's game on Thursday. Coach Fusina wasn't yelling. He wasn't angry, 24-some hours, almost 24 hours after blowing an 18-point lead in the second half. There was a sternness about him, and there was an area of focus about this men's team. They weren't mad. They weren't ticked off. You could just tell that they were woken up by the 18-point blown lead in the second half against Chatham. I think as long as Alize Alonso stays out of foul trouble, W&J only shoots at 28% from the field, and the opponents this season average more points off turnovers than W&J does. They're minus 1.5 in the turnover margin. We've seen Waynesburg be able to turn teams over this season. They can turn W&J over, get out in fast breaks and score, and Isaiah Alonso is not on the bench in foul trouble. This might be a close game.
Waynesburg, if that would happen, they would need guys to step up like who did last Saturday, and guys like Jansen Knotts and Bryson Wilt and Ryan Felberg. Felberg was a guy who didn't really do much in the game on Wednesday, 1 for 9 shooting, 5 points in general. But when we come back on the Waynesburg University Sports Network, we'll be previewing the other women's games in the President's Athletic Conference. Most of the women's games in the President's Athletic Conference today feature lopsided matchups with upper echelon teams in the PAC versus, I'd say, the bottom feeder teams in the conference. 3 other women's basketball games will be playing at 1 o'clock today, as well as Waynesburg's game. Let's start out in Bethany, West Virginia, as the 2-3 Bison will be hosting the 3-0 St. Vincent College Bearcats. Nicholas, what do you think will happen in that matchup?
Well, right now, blanket statement. I think St. Vincent will win that game. Here are some of the reasons why. St. Vincent hasn't played since February the 13th against Waynesburg, so they haven't played in a while. Their game against Teal that was supposed to be played on the 20th got postponed, but St. Vincent has the experience, and they've got some talented players as well. In that game against Waynesburg, the last game St. Vincent played, Maddie Weber had a double-double, 10 points, 15 rebounds. Taylor Gear had led St. Vincent's team with 16 points, and I think on Waynesburg, Marley Wolf and Avery Robinson both scored over 20, but St. Vincent just has this element where they play as a team well, and right now they're undefeated. They've won the 3 games that they've played so far, and they're the 3rd best team in terms of standings in the PAC. So I think their experience is going to help them out in this game. And I know Bethany has some pretty good players as well. I know Bella Scoble, in the last game that Bethany played, she scored 25 points. She's only a freshman. But Bethany has no seniors, 2 juniors. They've got a lack of experience, and St. Vincent, I think, just plays well as a team, and that will allow St. Vincent to beat the 2-3 Bethany team.
Jack, do you have St. Vincent or Bethany?
Not so fast, my friend.
Oh, this again. Yeah.
Give me the Bethany Bison. I'm going to use Nick's argument against him. I think that St. Vincent not playing for a couple of weeks might hurt them. Bethany can be pretty good in transition. I think they might get out and run, maybe on a St. Vincent team that's a little bit slower, and they're playing at home in friendly confines. So I like Bethany by maybe 5 or less points. Give me the Bison in the upset.
See, I think St. Vincent is still going to be way too much for Bethany to handle in this matchup. I'm very glad that you did the not so fast, my friend thing, so I don't have to keep doing it over and over again every week. Let's stay out of state before we move back into Pennsylvania. On to Ohio now. Franciscan is 1-3. The Barons will face one of the best teams in the PAC and a 5-0 Grove City team. One of Ohio State's signs says, so much to discover. Nicholas, do you think Franciscan will discover an upset over Grove City?
No. Not at all. I mean, Franciscans kind of struggled both on the men's and women's side, but I mean they've struggled so far this year. 1-3. They're the number 8 team in the standings right now. I just think that Grove City has had a pretty good team over the last few seasons, and there's nothing that Franciscan has, nothing special that I've noticed from Franciscan that's going to allow Franciscan to beat a team like Grove City.
Jack?
I'm kidding.
Okay.
Franciscans had a rude awakening to the PAC, both on the men's and women's side, and they're facing against, I think, my pick to win the women's PAC basketball championship. Grove City's awesome. They get out and run. They can score underneath, and they can shoot it well from 3, and they play kick butt defense. So give me Grove City by 20 plus.
I 100% agree with you there, Jack. I believe Grove City is also one of my teams I project to see in the President's Athletic Conference Championship. This next matchup might be the most intriguing one today in the PAC as the 2-4 Chatham Cougars host the 4-2 Westminster Titans. Westminster, in my opinion, has a better roster than its record shows, but they've been an average team this season. Nicholas, who do you think will win in that matchup?
I got Chatham winning that game, and I know Chatham's only 2-4 right now, and they're toward the bottom of the standings right now, but watching them play Waynesburg, they've got some talented players, I believe. You know, Brittany Smith inside, she came in as a substitution, but, I mean, she rebounded well. Labriola Smith, another forward who did well. And then they've got some good scores, including Katie Fertig. She scored around 20 against Waynesburg. So, I mean, you know, she's a good player. They've got a lot of good weapons. They've got some good experience. Westminster doesn't have quite the experience. They've got a heavy freshman-sophomore roster. So, though their record is better, though Westminster's record is better than Chatham's, I still think Chatham has the experience. Chatham's warmed up, and Chatham will pull out the win in that game.
All right, I'm not going to overuse Lee Corso's trademark, but I will take Westminster. The glaring number for me in the Chatham win against Waynesburg, they shot 7 for 30 from 3. They're not going to be able to do that against a team like Westminster. Nick's right. Chatham's good inside, but Westminster is also pretty good inside. And 23 missed three-pointers might create some long rebounds and might allow Westminster to get out and run in transition and put together a couple of 8-0, 10-0, 12-2 runs that might ultimately run Chatham out of the gym. I don't think it gets to that point, but I think Westminster wins this one from anywhere between like 5 to 12 points.
Give me Chatham in this matchup. Wow. I think Katie Fertig, I also agree with you, Nick. I think she's one of the best scorers in the President's Athletic Conference. I think Chatham has a chance to go in here and create a little bit of an upset today against Westminster. The last matchup in the President's Athletic Conference is tonight at 7 in Beaver Falls. The Geneva Golden Tornadoes are 3-5 this season and host the winless Teal Tomcats. Nicholas, will Teal pick up its first win of the season?
No way. There's nothing really to say about Teal. There's nothing special over the last few years. They didn't win a game last season. They were the 9th place team, which means they were the only team not to make playoffs in the PAC last year. No, they're not gonna pick up their first win. Geneva has more talent than Teal. Lauren Tipton's one of the good players on that team. I think only her would be enough to take over Teal. There's not much to say about it. Teal's not going to win.
I think this one has the potential to be closer than Franciscan and Grove City, but I think a good bet still is Geneva by 20 plus.
Lauren Tipton, London Tipton, Lyle Tipton, it doesn't matter. Give me Geneva. We've talked about every other matchup that will be happening in the President's Athletic Conference, but there is still one more to talk about when we come back here on the Waynesburg University Sports Network pregame show. We'll be previewing and predicting the Waynesburg versus Washington and Jefferson women's basketball game. You're watching the Waynesburg University Sports Network pregame show. Now it is time to cover our matchup we will be featuring today as the women's basketball team is taking on Washington and Jefferson. Waynesburg is coming into the matchup winless, and Washington and Jefferson is one of the best teams in the President's Athletic Conference with a 5-0 record. Jack, what are some of the keys for Waynesburg to create a little bit of an upset today?
Well, you got to defend the perimeter very well. W&J shoots at 46%, if you round up, 47% from the field and 33% from beyond the arc. The opponents don't do very well against W&J either, which bodes not well for Waynesburg University since they only shot 22% from the field and 15%, check that, 13% from 3 on Thursday against Chatham. The opponents against W&J this season shoot 31% from the field on average and 27% from 3. So translation, W&J is 5-0. They shoot it very well against the opponents, and the opponents don't shoot it very well against them. W&J is going to have to either break away from that tradition on the season for be able to have Waynesburg stay into this game, and Waynesburg's definitely going to have to break away from the trend this season, as you saw it on Thursday night against Chatham. They didn't shoot it very well. Waynesburg's going to have to shoot, I don't want to say almost lights out, but lights out against W&J to be in contention.
Nicholas, what's a matchup you're looking forward to today?
I kind of still want to see the performances from Brooke Fuller and Andrew Orlowski like they've been doing, how they've been playing. But again, it's a roster with 7. They've got a lack of depth. And if they want to win a game like this, the 7 players or potentially 8 players that they'll have today, they've got to play a little bit harder. They've got to take advantage of shots. They've got to take advantage of rebounds. Every opportunity matters when you're dealing with a lack of personnel, especially too against a better team. So they've got to take better shots. They've got to score more. They've got to take advantage of their defensive successes. And that's really the only key. That's the only way I see them beating Washington and Jefferson is if they step it up, have good performances all around, and take advantage of opportunity.
I like how you mentioned Brooke Fuller right there, Nicholas Callas.
Yes.
I believe that Brooke Fuller is going to be a key contributor for Waynesburg if Waynesburg wants to win this game, and they should want to win the game against their rivals 30 minutes up north from I-79. But on the game on Thursday night, Brooke Fuller, 12 points, but 10 of those points came from the line, or 8 of the points came from the line. She was 2 for 6 field goal wise, but they need to keep feeding Brooke Fuller the ball more. She does not get the ball enough, and if she does get the ball enough, we'll see the Brooke Fuller that we saw last year, who was arguably one of the top players in the President's Athletic Conference, but that hasn't really happened this year. We've just been seeing the Andrew Orlowski show so far in the season. So, Jack, who's going to step up for Waynesburg to win today?
No, I have to absolutely agree with you when it comes to Brooke Fuller. I mean, we saw how many times her sophomore season a year ago where it would be throw to the post, one dribble, spin, score, like it was second nature to her. I mean, nobody seemed to score more of ease than Brooke Fuller last year in the post. We haven't seen that this year. We need to see that on in about 20 minutes or so when the game tips off. Not 20 minutes, like 10 minutes or so when the game tips off. But we need to see that against W&J. I think W&J has a very good chance to go, 20 plus for girls like Ali Cito, Maria Lawthorne, and Lauren Gilbert. They all might go off, and that's where Waynesburg will have its trouble. But one number that bodes well for Waynesburg is W&J only shoots at 61% from the free throw line. So if they can not give up easy buckets, get some fouls, get W&J to the charity stripe, but keep players like Brooke Fuller and Andrew Orlowski on the court and not in foul trouble, that might help out Waynesburg because W&J hasn't shot it well from the free throw line this season.
I agree. Nick, who's going to be that one key contributor for you in this matchup?
I mean, it's got to be Brooke Fuller. I mean, I agree with Jack completely. You got a 6-foot forward presence there who has the potential to shoot well and, because of height can get rebounds more often than others. But, yeah, I think that she's got to start shooting better. She's got to keep getting rebounds, and I think that she could very well be a key contributor. If she performs well, that will boost Waynesburg's chances of beating Washington and Jefferson.
Let's move over to predictions now. Jack, who do you have in the matchup? Do you think the Presidents are going to stay undefeated, or do you think Waynesburg will pick up its first win this season?
The Lady Jackets will not impeach the Presidents today. I think when I said that Ali Cito, Lauren Gilbert, Maria Lawthorne could all go off, I could see the three of them having anywhere between 50 and 60 points collectively. I think that the scoring will come in buckets for W&J. It has all season long. There's no reason for that to change against Waynesburg. And unfortunately, it pains me to say this about the Lady Jackets, but they only shot 23% from the field against Chatham. I don't see any reason that's going to change against a better team, an undefeated team in W&J. Give me the Lady Presidents by 15 to 20 points.
Nick, who do you have?
Yeah, for every reason Jack said and more, I think that Washington and Jefferson is going to win this game. An undefeated team playing a team that has yet to win a game. I'm sure Waynesburg will win a game later on in their last 4 games of the season, but their first win will not come against Washington and Jefferson.
I agree with you on that statement, Nicholas. I don't think that the Lady Jackets will be winless this season, but I'm not picking them to win today. I think the Lady Jackets will pick up their first win either against, let's say, Franciscan or Teal, but I'm going to take the Presidents in this matchup today. Ali Cito, I think she's going to be too much for Waynesburg to stop. You have to add another factor, too. Lauren Gilbert. Lauren Gilbert a couple years ago was a really strong player for the Presidents. But thank you, Nicholas and Jack, for your input on the Waynesburg University Sports Network pregame show. We'll be taking a quick break before we send it down to our announcers for the matchup.